Sorry about that.
Yeah, I'm ready to go. Give me some thumbs up. Okay, I think we're ready to go. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Music Exchange here at the School of Music, here in the University of Leeds, and welcome to those of us joining online as well. I know there's many of you, I think, out there online somewhere that I can't see. So thank you for coming today. To briefly introduce myself as your host for the evening, I'm James Cannon. So I'm a music psychology postgraduate researcher here in the School of Music, and I research electronic dance music culture. In particular, the science behind how we move, feel and connect on the dance floor. And I'll be speaking a little bit about that and my research shortly. But tonight's event brings together academics, DJs and industry professionals to explore the positive benefits of nightlife and how research can play a role in sustaining and strengthening dance music culture. And I'm really excited we have such an incredible panel of experts joining us here tonight. Also, Kika Loma is joining us online, and we'll see them in a minute. So why are we doing this? Well, I mean, in recent years, we've seen a wave of research revealing the many benefits of electronic dance music culture, from community building, social connection, identity formation, self-expression, all these kind of things that if you're involved in the culture, I think are quite intuitive and you know about from being part of it. But as many of you may be aware, this sits in contrast to a significant decline in the nightlife industry at the moment, particularly post-COVID. And as reported by the Nighttime Industries Association, the NTIA, since 2005, the number of UK nightclubs has fallen from over 3,000 to fewer than 1,000. And on average, yeah, it was like 851. Wow, yeah. So, and it keeps falling. So that's a steep decline, and on average there is approximately 10 club closures per month, and the NTIA warn actually, in fact, that if this trajectory were to continue, in theory, there would be no venues left by 2029, which is a scary thought. Obviously, I hope that probably won't happen, but if the trajectory were to continue in the rate that it is, that is what would happen. So, just in the last year alone as well in Leeds, we've lost iconic venues, such as Old Red Bus Station, Wire, and I think Freedom Mills is due to close down at the end of the month as well. And these are just ones that I'm personally aware of, and I've had good nights out at myself. So, yeah, it's a worrying trend, and I know this is reflected across many other cities across the country. So I don't think it's controversial to say at this point that nightlife is in crisis. So we're here to ask, how can research support the future of the nightlife industry? How can the positive aspects of nightlife and dance music culture that we can see in research be translated into real-world impact for venues, artists, audiences, and the industry at large? So to do this, we'll start with two short research presentations showcasing the work from Alice O'Grady, and then from myself, followed by a roundtable discussion and Q&A with our panel. And we want to get as many of you in the audience as possible involved in these discussions as well. We don't have loads of time, so there is a QR code to a Padlet link there on the big screen. So during the course of the evening, you can contribute your thoughts and questions, and hopefully at the end, Alinka will relay, who's moderating, sat at the front there, will relay some of these, and we can discuss them. So yeah, I think that's everything, yeah. And also, so you're all aware, this event is being recorded, and it's going to be able to be watched back on YouTube, I think is the idea at the end as well. So yeah, that would be really good. Cool. So before we get into the research presentations, I'd like to introduce our wonderful panelists. So thank you all so much for being here tonight. Can I ask each of you to introduce yourself, who you are, what do you do, and also I'll start with a quick question of what does dance music culture mean personally to you? I'll go from right to left and who I can see actually. So we'll start with yourself, Alice.
Okay, thanks, James. So my name's Alice O'Grady. I'm a professor of applied performance here at the University of Leeds in the School of Performance and Cultural Industries. And I have been researching dance music culture for 23 years, so quite a long time. And what does it mean to me? Well, I turned 18 in the second summer of love, so you could very quickly do your calculations as to how old I am. And it was a very exciting time, and it was when dance music was changing things. It was changing culture, not just on the dance floor, but more widely. It was having an impact in society and politics and the media and fashion. And it was an exciting time, and it was a space of possibility. So that is what it means to me, that it is a place and a space of possibility.
Amazing. Kikaloma, would you like to introduce?
Hi everyone, good evening. Nice to be here. My name is Kikaloma. I do many things across the music space, but I guess the one that I'm most known for is the fact that I'm a DJ. I'm actually based here in Berlin, but I travel very frequently to play in various cities around the world. I play regularly in Berghain in Berlin. I've played in small clubs in Uzbekistan. I've played in massive clubs in China. DJing is primarily my bread and butter. I also run a not-for-profit community radio station in Accra in Ghana called Oroko Radio. I co-founded that station with a friend of mine, and so work very actively to kind of document nightlife culture, and actually I'm kind of like a living embodiment of what the impact of nightlife culture has had and does have on people, because most of my community is formed from it. Connected to that, this year in April, I recently released a documentary with Pioneer DJ, also known as Alpha Theta, called We Become One, going into the science behind what happens in your brain when you listen to music and the science behind club culture itself. So what is it about all of these different factors, whether it's the music, the people, the lights, that really facilitate connection with one another? And I guess to that, I would say nightlife to me is everything. I wouldn't be where I am. I wouldn't be able to pay rent if it wasn't for nightlife. And, you know, the majority of my community all around the world is formed from nightlife. I would say DJing has been the ultimate cheat code to be connected with the coolest people in every single country that I play in. And so, yeah, it means a lot to me. And yeah, I also actually have a scientific background. I studied engineering. So being able to partner the two of nightlife and dance music with kind of like the scientific context is something that I really love. So that's me.
Amazing. Rufi?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Rufi. I am a music tech and research executive. I work as a product manager for a few music tech startups, and I also am quite heavily involved in research. I am the music research lead at Audience Strategies, the company that does the NTIA UK report every year. And I'm a DJ. I also sit on the Association for Electronic Music's executive board. Dance floor means everything to me. It changed my life. Dubstep and drum and bass changed my life when I discovered or heard it for the first time on the dance floor, which was many years back. And that's the day I decided to work in music. Dance floor changed my life. And still a raver, always be a raver, hope to rave when I'm 90. So yeah, it means everything to me.
Wonderful, so cool. Finally, Tony.
Yeah, hello everyone, I'm Tony Rigg. My sort of headline job is music industry advisor, but I might have a foot in both the industry, the music industry, and in the world of academia. So I've contributed to books such as The Evolution of Electronic Dance Music, which I co-edited, and things like the Present and Future of Music Law. So, but also I've spent a lot of time working. I suppose I could be seen to some degree as an outsider in this because I don't dance, and I don't want to sort of describe it as voyeuristic, but I've overseen the management of maybe 100 venues and clubs. So I've seen the power of what they do, but my role has been to facilitate these experiences and to make sure people, that they're as good as possible and that people have a fantastic time. So I was an operations director for Ministry of Sound, which was indeed a very powerful, at the peak of its powers, the world-leading electronic music brand. So, I think hopefully that'll do.
Thank you, Tony. And a lot of us there said dance music means everything, and for me as well, dance music means everything. And I think that does set the tone beautifully for what we're going to discuss tonight. So we'll kick off with Alice's presentation. I'll give you the tapper, and I think the slides will appear. So it's just the next two along. And again, yeah.
Lovely, thank you. So the title of my short presentation this evening is Age is Just a Number, Persistent Participation in Electronic Dance Music by Women Over 40. So I'm glad you're going to still be clubbing when you're 90. So this is going to be very relevant to you. So this is some research that I have been doing for a number of years with my colleague and friend over there, Alinka. So we are two old ravers. We've been at this game quite a long time. I won't say how long, but it's quite a long time. And we are both academics here at Leeds, but we come from very different disciplines, actually. We're in the same faculty, but Alinka is a music psychologist, and I am a performance studies academic. But we both have a love and a passion for electronic dance music, and we also share a scholarly interest in health and well-being. And so we decided some time ago that we would combine these interests and do some interdisciplinary, collaborative work together. So I don't know whether you can see this, but we were noticing, really, the prevalence of older people on the dance floors that we were inhabiting, and also, you know, we're no spring chickens ourselves. So we were kind of interested in this phenomenon, really. And we were also noticing that there were lots and lots of memes cropping up on Facebook, Instagram, various other places. You may have seen the how old do you have to be to stop, when does it become sad to be clubbing and things like this. And I think it was determined that 37 was the official age of when it became sad to be on the dance floor. So we were quite fired up by this, and we thought we need to do some research. This one says, although I can still party like an absolute rock star, it would appear that I cannot recover like one. So that's what it says there. So we decided we would do a survey study, and we did this back in 2021, and we surveyed women over the age of 40 to really understand what motivates older women to engage in electronic dance music culture, and more importantly, how they feel about being an older person in this space. So scholarship around electronic dance music has traditionally seen it as a youth activity, so using the theoretical paradigm of youth studies to understand it as a phenomenon, and this doesn't really fit anymore. It certainly doesn't fit with people who don't fit into that category anyway. So we were interested in looking at what strategies these women use to navigate these spaces and how they manage their participation. And we were also very interested in the contribution that it plays to their lives. So we knew from a personal perspective what contribution it plays in our lives, but we were interested in widening that out. So this is what really motivated this survey study. And we got just under, I think it was 140 responses, something like that. So we asked a variety of questions under a bunch of themes that came out of some previous research that I'd done with another colleague here in the School of Psychology. And the first theme was really around the sense of belonging. So we asked a bunch of questions around that. And maybe not surprisingly, for women that still attend clubs, 90% of them said they felt at home in the club. But actually, against that, 1 in 5 said they felt they shouldn't be participating because of their age. So that's quite a high statistic. It's quite a high proportion. There was also a clear indication that these women felt much more at home in what they considered to be an underground club than a mainstream club. And there was quite a lot of discussion because we, as well as the questions, we asked for people to give their free answers as well. So there was quite a lot of discussion about the difference in the kind of inclusivity of underground clubs as opposed to mainstream clubs. We asked a bunch of questions about appearance as well, and this wasn't necessarily because we're particularly interested in what people go out wearing when they go clubbing, but it was more about how these women feel they present as older within the club space and how they used what they wore to kind of represent themselves, and whether they worked through wanting to disappear in the crowd or wanting to be visible in the crowd. What came out very strongly was this notion of dressing in what was called an age-appropriate manner. So they didn't want to be seen to be wearing the wrong things. There was definitely a sense of getting it wrong or getting it right. And there was very much a sense of internal conflict around this notion of standing out. So lots of women talked about dressing for comfort, but also wanting to just kind of blend into the background, whereas others did the absolute opposite and went as sparkly and as outrageous as they possibly could to kind of claim their space. So actually how women were using dress and appearance became quite interesting. We asked some questions about safety and how safe they felt going out. 74% said they felt safe, but 44% said they had been groped or worse whilst they'd been out. So again, some interesting statistics there. There was also quite a lot about friendships. 88% agreed that clubbing was a way of connecting with others, but this was not contingent on age at all. Age didn't really play a factor in this. They also talked about the importance of fleeting friendships. Making friendships on the dance floor with people they may never see again was actually really valuable and just as important as meeting people on the dance floor that they would then have long-standing relationships with. So the nature of friendships, fleeting and long-lasting, was important. We asked a lot about well-being. As I said at the top, we've both got an interest in well-being beyond this subject matter as well. And we conducted the survey in COVID. And that actually gave us a real opportunity because at the time we ran the survey, clubs were shut and we didn't know how or when or if we would return. So actually how clubbing contributes to people's well-being was really front and centre of people's minds because they weren't able to engage in it. So we got some really interesting data from here. So 91% agreed that clubbing contributed positively to their well-being, and a massive 66% said it was for them a spiritual experience, which is, I think, quite an interesting statistic. 63% said that they went clubbing to escape the reality of life, which I as a performance academic, I quite like that. But 11%, well, only 11%, I would, small number, 11% were concerned about the negative impact of clubbing on their well-being, particularly in relation to age. So there were positives and there were negatives. The positives that they felt energized by being on the dance floor. It was for them a way of keeping fit. They got great enjoyment from it. It was a kind of a reset on their day-to-day, and that actually some of them said for them it was a form of therapy. The negative impacts were things like recovery times. As you get older, recovery takes longer. The come down, the tiredness, the aching joints, those kinds of things were mentioned. And then what came out of that was how these women talked about balance. That actually, yes, there are some negatives, but the positives generally outweighed those negatives, and that what they sought was balance. So they talked about the strategies they adopted to mitigate some of the more negative impacts. And as I say, this gave us a real opportunity, COVID gave us an opportunity to look at the impact of absence. So what these women said about the absence of clubbing in their lives was more revealing than actually saying what they gained from going, because it had been taken away from them. And so the significance of it as a central pillar of their lives came across really, really strongly. I've got some voices here. On balance, I think EDM has a very positive impact on my well-being. I've never been into drink or drugs, so that's never been a problem, and I love dancing. I will dance the whole night, so I'm getting a serious workout. It sounds ridiculously corny, but there are moments in the music which seem to touch my soul. I feel a sense of bliss. It's also so far removed from my career that I quite like defying expectations. So a lot of these women, they're in their 40s, 50s, and some touching in their 60s. For some, they're at the height of their professional lives. For some, they've got kids, teenage kids. They're managing older parents as well. So they've got quite a lot of familial commitments and work commitments, and so they were balancing that. I love this quote: "You don't get old from dancing. You get old when you stop." In regular club nights, I feel uncomfortable. Being a single female older clubber seems to make other people feel uncomfortable. And that's something we've talked about, how the presence of older people can make some people uncomfortable, which I think is interesting. Some people can't get their heads around why I'm there and struggle to accept me. There are some comments, not all of them are kind, but there were always comments. If it's not about your age, it's about something else. And that really talks about the misogyny and the ageism that intersects. So we talk as well in our work about intersectionality and how this goes much beyond just a question of age. More and more, I'm feeling as if I don't fit, but that may come from within rather than anything anyone has ever said to me. So that's just a real snapshot of some of the voices. So some brief overview of the findings. While motivations for attending nightclubs are broadly the same for these older women as they are for younger people, the implications of their participation are different. So they adopt intentional strategies. They choose their venue very carefully. They choose where they go, who they go with, what they do when they get there, how they network, how they have a support system, how they get home. There's a lot of intentionality that goes around their participation. They also grapple with their own internalized prejudices about age. So ageism is a prejudice on the dance floor, off the dance floor, beyond these women and within these women. And there's definitely a tension between wanting to keep clubbing but feeling like it's not compatible with getting older. So other older people definitely do want to continue to occupy subcultural spaces. There is no doubt about that. But their ability to do so is shaped by intersectionality. And that's not just age and gender, but also class, ethnicity, and sexuality. The participation of older women in EDMC, for me, is a matter of social justice. So how might this research help inform policy and practice within the industry? You will no doubt have read about Vicky McClure's daytime raves, Annie Mac's daytime raves. The industry is kind of changing according to demographics. These two images here, as an 80-year-old woman celebrating her birthday at one of Vicky McClure's raves, and down here is Annie Mac. I'm not saying that they are the same at all, but the images of older people are definitely circulating more and more in the popular press and in the industry press, and so we're really interested in how research can meet that changing nature of industry practice. And if you're interested, that's the link to the publication where Alinka and I have published this work in the Psychology of Music. And we also have a chapter forthcoming in the Cambridge Guide to Electronic Dance Music, which is also about clubbing and aging. And I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's amazing. I think it's really insightful work that looks at a demographic that I think is often overlooked. And I hope they don't mind me saying this, but I've been to Noisily Festival with Alice and Alinka, and I can vouch for the fact that you're still raving just as hard as anyone. So yeah, it's really great stuff. I'll just jump straight, quick insight from one of our panelists. I don't know, Ruth, if you want to jump in with your thoughts on this.
Yeah, my rave buddy, who I go with for all drum and bass gigs, is 56, and she is the coolest raver I've met in my entire life. And I want more and more people like her. I want to see more and more people like her on the floor. And one of the things I wrote down, which was quoted in the NTIA report that we did last year, Amy, who's the Chief Impact Officer at Resident Advisor, said something, and I was like, yeah, this is exactly how I feel. She said, dance floor are sacred. It's a microcosm of what is potentially achievable. It's a utopia. And that resonated with me because that's exactly how I feel. It's a place where you can just be whoever you want to be. Doesn't matter how old you are. So I think, I just hope that everyone who's there, whether they are 20 or 60, they can just be themselves, and that's all that should matter. Yeah.
Great. Awesome. Okay, so to stick to time, I think I'll move on to our next presentation, which is me. So I'll kind of just go from the role of host, presenter. I don't know if... Yeah. Okay, so this is going to be a very quick, brief overview of my PhD work that I'm doing here in the University of Leeds, called How Does Dance Music Move Us? Emotion, Movement and Social Connection on the Dance Floor. And it's a project supervised by Alice, Anna Linker, and also Scott Bannister. I'm not sure if he's online, he might be. So we know from lots of qualitative research, be that interview-based research, research observations, ethnographic work, and other research of that kind of nature, that dance music culture promotes feelings of connection, community. We see this theme time and time again over years of research. People describe a feeling of oneness, a feeling of unity with a group, and they also describe being able to bond with their friendship group quite closely, things like this. And we've also recently seen that this is linked to well-being, and as Alice just told us there, you know, that theme of well-being was coming up strongly in their work as well. However, research has yet to really understand the kind of behavioural and psychophysiological processes that might underpin why we feel these strong feelings of social connection on the dance floor. And so I'm kind of taking ideas from wider psychology and also the nature of what a dance music event is. You're moving and you're experiencing strong emotions with the music, and looking at these two factors and how they contribute to social connection and trying to measure them on the dance floor as best as I can, basically. So the project I'm going to talk about today, the particular study, I should say, which is part of a wider PhD project, was kind of research that took place at a real-world club event. So I put on an event, basically, in collaboration with an event promoter. So I've got, you know, multiple friends kind of in the industry. I have a friend who is a promoter, and I went to her and I said, okay, like, we could put on an event here, but we could also use it as a vehicle for research. And so it was kind of a normal night out, sort of trance, techno, sort of housey kind of vibes, at a local venue in Bristol called Exchange. And so participants who agreed to take part in the research at the event were able to claim a free ticket. And in return, they just had to do a few little things that we tried to make as non-intrusive as possible to collect some data during the event. And there were also normal punters attending the event as well, just for context. So it was a paid event that people could come to. If they didn't want to be part of the research, tickets were like £8. But the participants that claimed a free ticket, there was a motion tracking app set up on their phone. So there's an app that we used called Physics Toolbox Sensor Suite Pro, I think is the full name, which tracks your movement across 3 axes as you're moving, and in this case, as you're on the dance floor. So I've got an example of the running belt. So I basically gave participants a running belt. They put their phone in the belt, wore the belt on their waist. So as they were dancing around, the app was tracking their movement there. So it was like trying to track their global movement as best as possible. And so they danced as long as they were comfortable to do so, ideally throughout the whole event, but obviously we didn't force them to. If they wanted to stop at any point because they needed access to their phone, maybe using their own smartphones, they could come back to the box office and give it back to us at that point, or when they were just leaving the event. So when they were done, they returned to me at the box office and my volunteer sent over the data, and then we had that movement data from them. Then, when they exited the event, they had 48 hours to complete a post-event survey, and this was measuring how connected they felt with the audience during the event, as well as their emotional experiences, which I'll come on to in a bit more detail in a minute. And so we collected that data as well. And these are images from the actual event. You can see someone wearing the running belt. These images are a little bit edited because we had a photographer who did some fancy editing, but that was the event. I'm not going to bore you with the details of all the analysis of the movement data, but this is just to provide some context of the kind of cool things you can do with the data. And these were the two most important metrics of movement that I did analyze. So quantity of motion is literally just how intensely the person was moving, so their overall movement intensity. And these graphs are showing it at 2-minute time windows across the duration of the night while they had that recording. And entrainment, on the other hand, is how much they matched the rhythm of the beat, how in line their body was to the rhythm of the beat, how much they synchronized to the beat, basically. So that was another metric that we kind of analyzed. And you can see it kind of varies throughout the course of the night. That blue line at the top is the tempo of the DJ set that was playing at the same time. So you can see during the course of the night, the tempo, as you might expect, was increasing. The DJ was building the tempo up. But entrainment was obviously very variable because they might have been off the dance floor, they might have been going to the smoking area, they might have been doing various different things. But these are the kind of measures that I then used to look at whether there was a relationship between those, on average, throughout the course of the night, and social connection and emotional experiences, if that makes sense. So I've probably got 15,000 words of results at this point from this project, and I've boiled it down to 3 sentences. So these are the most important things I think are interesting to take away tonight. And that's that higher entrainment appeared to be associated with higher social connection. Basically, the more the person moved, the greater the degree to which the person matched the rhythm of the beat and were synchronized to the beat, the greater feeling of social connection they had to the other people around them. And also high embodied pleasure was related to social connection. And what do we mean by embodied pleasure? Well, that was a kind of measure that I used a kind of term that I coined to measure the pleasurable feeling that you get when dancing to music. So that kind of adrenaline, that kind of endorphin release. It's a self-report measure of that the participants reported themselves, that positive feeling when they're moving to the music. And so, yeah, we found that was associated with greater social connection to the wider group on the dance floor. And we also, interestingly, measured emotional contagion, which I think is a really important piece of this as well, which is the spread or amplification of emotions amongst a group. So you're kind of catching those emotions off other people. And we found that people reported this to a really high degree, like this emotional contagion did seem to be happening. We also took some measures from the DJs as well, and we saw that the DJs were actually influenced, as you might expect, by the emotional reactions of the audience. We didn't find a specific correlation between emotional contagion and social connection in this study, possibly because it's a smaller sample, but I have done in previous studies, so I think it's an interesting component to the work. So yeah, actually it's probably important to mention that what we're kind of theorizing here is that if you're moving in time with the music, and you're therefore moving in time with other people around you, you're feeling more connected to the people around you because you're synchronized together. And there's a lot of experimental research outside of musical context that show that if you synchronize with someone, even if you just tap along with them on a table, this has kind of been studied in a lab setting, that you feel more connected to them. So I guess the key takeaway from that is that we're really finding evidence to show that dance music events are a unique opportunity in which to experience physical and emotional synchronicity with others, enhancing social connection. And there's a lot of implications to this, and there was a lot of things I learned from doing this. The really positive thing is that people were really interested in this. They found it really cool that they were able to contribute to research while being on a night out. However, there was a lot of data loss. We were getting people to use their own smartphones. In future, I'd probably, if I had the budget, get people to have a load of wristband sensors that could track their movement that they would wear for the whole time. It was just more practical to get them to use their smartphones and easier in this instance. It would also be desirable to have video recording for positional and behavioral data. But we wanted to make this specific study as non-intrusive and naturalistic as possible. And also there's barriers ethically there about consent when video recording, although I still think there are opportunities to do that. Obviously there are things like boiler room and these kind of things where people are recorded and that's okay. And implications for events. I mean, I've put this quote here because I thought it was really interesting that when this particular participant was wearing the belt with the accelerometer on the app, they kind of saw it as a game. So they said, I was aware that it was on. It was almost like a game. And I was like, I'm going to dance a lot. I'm going to be like the winner of this game. I'm going to have the best stats. And then I got thinking about this, about there's possibly avenues there to kind of gamify the event experience and do research at the same time, or use some of these tools that we can use for research to make a kind of immersive nightlife experience. Like maybe it would be cool if we could see a leaderboard or compare with our friends the amount that we've been dancing compared to others and things like this. Might be a rogue idea, don't know. Something that we might want to discuss. Thought it was cool. So yeah, I'll leave it there. And for myself and Alice, if you do have any thoughts or questions about this research, please do pop them in the Padlet and we'll try to get time at the end to discuss them. I will now, I guess, hand over to the panel to see if they've got any thoughts, immediate thoughts on this work. Tony, I don't know if you'd like to kick us off.
Yeah, I thought it was very interesting. So one of the things that I sort of said that whilst I don't dance, I've seen probably more dance floors than most. And it's an essential part of putting a business hat on. The product, for want of a better term, the audience and the participants are, with an empty dance floor isn't much fun, is it? So a huge dimension of trying to get people to come back and have great experiences is if they are connecting, all the things really you've described, I think there, James. So I'd be very interested. I chair a music association called the Lancashire Music Association, and I'm also an ambassador for the nighttime economy as well for Lancashire. So, very much, I'd say my role has become, to a degree, advocacy, because I can see the benefits and the power of the dance floor, to society. And it's sort of, again, the decline in numbers is a great concern. So I think I'd be very interested to see if we can, gamify. That might be. It's a new idea of a potential enhancement, and something that maybe we can try, and explore as a possible new idea, really. To that could create a sort of new type of engagement. It certainly fits in with a lot of, consumer behaviours, young consumer behaviours today. But I thought it was also worth also mentioning that the research that Alice was presenting, in essence, I've been watching that play out. It's incredible to see the numbers, but it absolutely concurs with everything that I've been seen for, over the years, up till today, So the research, I think, is incredibly useful, and I guess we'll get onto this, but we need to make sure it reaches people who can put it to good use.
Yeah, and we'll definitely come on to that. Thank you, Tony.
James, I want to add, I do that. I play that game with myself. So I count the steps. I went to Berghain the last time I went. The time before, I did 40,000 steps, and I was like, oh, the next time I'm going to go, I'm going to do more. So I did 50,000 last time. So I play that game with myself. Anyone else counting their steps when they're partying, I'm guessing?
That's so true, actually, yeah, using the step counter. Yeah, I have got friends that do that. No, that's funny. Yeah, that's cool. Kikaloma, I'd love to get your thoughts. These kind of ideas that I'm talking about there in terms of synchronicity of movement and sharing emotional experiences with others, and that being related to social connection on the dance floor. Does that resonate with your own experiences at all?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like both from a scientific perspective, but also from like a personal perspective, a lot of what your research says resonates with a lot of the topics that we covered in the documentary. Kind of making the link between movement, synchronicity, entrainment, and social salience. And I think that there's kind of maybe even some anthropological elements, maybe from like the evolution of us as human beings, that kind of contribute to that. Whether it's us moving as a tribe, us singing together and noticing that when we kind of move together, when we engage together, that we feel connected with one another because we're social beings. From a personal experience, I definitely feel it as well. And I guess one of the things, I think I've been in nightclubs almost every weekend for the past 2 to 3 years. So I have kind of like quite a broad range of experiences, from the more wider commercial events like the boiler rooms where there's like loads of cameras and people filming, to naturally the Berlin underground, no cameras allowed, no phones allowed, and you can also see the distinct difference. I think for me, the environments that really actively encourage participation, so as opposed to just coming from like the place of an observer, watching a DJ, filming a DJ, and just kind of having this audience and performer view, the kind of environments that encourage people to kind of put their phones down, whether that's through having no phone policies or other kind of active policies, you can really feel the difference in that social salience. And I always say that especially in clubs like in Berlin and maybe also in the Netherlands as well, where they have these kind of policies that encourage that, you really get the feeling that people are dancing like nobody's watching. There isn't the sense of judgment, that people are just moving their bodies completely freely. Also, to some of Alice's research, you also see that in a broad range of ages, you see that in a broader range of genders, and you really actively feel that connection. And funny enough, I also was in Berkane last month. I was playing there, and I had brought some friends over from Nigeria and Ghana who were visiting at the time. They're also club connoisseurs, as we call ourselves. And I was very interested to get their perspective on this club because of the lore and the history of it all. And some of their comments were how connected and how welcome they felt, because everyone had kind of had this warm energy and this kind of like dance floor facilitation of connection as well. And so it's really amazing to feel it in practice. I think there are some things that kind of hinder it, but overall it's definitely something I feel, and honestly the reason why I still do what I do.
Amazing. Yeah, your point about kind of no phones on the dance floor policies there, I think is really interesting and relevant. And I'm seeing that a lot more in the industry, especially, I won't get too far into that because I feel like there's an entire panel discussion you could have on this trend of social media infiltrating nightlife spaces, and the kind of privacy concerns around that, and people being filmed against their will and it taking you out of the moment. One of the not funny things, but I guess it was kind of by design, by having participants use their smartphones to measure movement, we kind of then branded it around a kind of no phones on the dance floor policy, because they had to have their phones in the waist while they were dancing. And so that in turn might have aided people being able to connect more authentically perhaps with people on the dance floor, because they weren't by design using their phones, because it was being used as a tool to collect movement data. But it really resonates with me, this idea of being more present in the moment, and how phones and social media can take you out of that, I think. I'm sure there is arguably another side to that argument about kind of documenting and archiving experiences through video, but probably another discussion. But yeah, really, really, really good insights. I don't know, Alice, if you had any comment you'd want to add here at the end. I'm aware I've taken up all the comments about my research, but yeah.
Just to say that I think the nature of synchronized movement, the power of synchronized movement, and that sense of immersion is a very powerful emotional experience that I think that this is where the research is really at, because we're trying to pinpoint what is it, which part of us is that speaking to. And you've talked a little bit about, finding our home, finding our place, finding our tribe through movement, through sound, through light. And a club space for me is that whole kind of immersive place. It's uber sensory. And that sense of getting lost in the dance floor, but in the crowd is so important. So it's not a singular experience. It is a collective experience. It is participatory. It is immersive. It is sensory. All of those things, I think, are at the heart of it. And what I should say as well is some of the stats that we had for our research from Resident Advisor was post-COVID, the return to the dance floor was highest in older people, and younger people were not returning in the same numbers. And I think this is the crisis. This is the real issue because of the nature of how young people are connecting with each other. It's different and mediated by phone. So I think, yes, it is another conversation, but it's an important one. And Alinka's waving because I think there's something on the Padlet.
Oh, there we are. Okay, I just wanted to reflect. We've had quite a few comments coming in, 2 or 3 on your presentation. Alice, one saying, joy is ageless. I find festival culture very inclusive as an older woman. I wear festival clothing that expresses joy but not revealing. Cloaks, hats, patterned trousers, but not tiny shorts and bra tops. I feel more comfortable in multi-generational events, but find younger festival goers very positive. So a comment on appearance there. Another one on your talk was about, just got me thinking about if they did or would also speak with the DJs who are older too. So like DJ Paulette, Honey Dijon, and the Eavesdrop Collective, for example. So maybe getting a DJ and performer perspectives. There's another question around, has there been research on why club spaces are closing? So obviously you said that the younger people were not coming back after COVID. Why aren't the younger people buying tickets? Is it linked only to economic reasons, or are there other factors driving that? There's all sorts of other further questions here. There's a comment about gamifying the dance floor and about that possibly making the dance floor more inclusive for disabled people. It could be an interesting area to tackle. Comments about quite a few detailed comments about your work, James, in terms of sort of demographics and differences between people and so on. So there's too many here, but if you go to the Padlet, then you've got an opportunity to see the sort of questions that people are asking. But I think the key one, and this sort of leads into the next stage, is how are we getting this research to policymakers?
Yeah, amazing. Thank you, Alinka. And I'll just add as well that Padlet and I'll talk about this a bit at the end, but I'll make that Padlet public so we can go back to these ideas, even in future discussions and events, hopefully, and we can peruse through them, because it seems like there's loads of input there, which is amazing. As Alinka said, we've just seen some great research there on what makes dance music such a kind of powerful tool, powerful force for communities and in people's lives. But how do we take this knowledge beyond academia, into clubs, into policy, into the hands of those who can help shape the future of nightlife? And so to explore this, I'd like to kind of open up our roundtable session now, which really centres around the board question of this evening, which is how can research best support the nightlife industry? And I think there are a lot of avenues to explore within that, not just limited to kind of further research we could do, but also the implications of the research, how can it be best used by the industry, how can it be leveraged to generate more kind of financial support for the sector, influence policy, change public perception. How could we start to reimagine nightlife event spaces, talking about gamifying as an example there, and I'm sure there's many more ideas. So lots to discuss. So I'm going to pose some big questions. And it would be great to get some audience input in the room and online. Alinka will have a microphone as well to some of these questions that I'll pose. We'll start with a big question. How can we make academic research more accessible and actionable for industry? for example, to help influence local or national policy to better support nightlife economies. And I'll start with Tony on that one, as I know he's probably got quite a lot to say about that. And then anyone who would like to input into that question, please pop your hand up in the room, or if any of our panelists would also like to speak to that question, also please pop your hand up as well. Tony, over to you.
Yeah, too much to say, I'm afraid. I could write a book on it. Oh, hang on, I have. But no, maybe not quite. That's the next book. It might. So I can mention a few things that we have done, and they seem to be working. So I know that Rufy produces reports which take on board academic perspective and incorporate academic research, and those reports are aimed at industry. So. Trade associations are a good medium to translate some of the things that we've found out. Obviously, I've worked with the people with Alice and James and Rufy as well on some reports. And I think to some degree, it's saying the right thing at the right time, or the important thing. So we did a report that was actually published by, which James did, a huge amount of the work on, really all the work, which was after COVID. One of the reasons why clubs have really suffered, there was, in essence, what we did was we educated people, the new next generations, not to go to clubs, to be less social. And of course, there was a massive financial attrition that clubs experienced, plus also some, dare I say, discriminant policies where nightclubs were excluded or were unable to access things like the cultural recovery funds and so on. So a good response to that at the time was a report that talked about the value to communities and culture of electronic dance music culture. So I think there's part of it is about having the right response at the right time, and I think clearly anything that is going to help inform and help to contribute to resolving the decline in this sector is valuable at the time. At this time, it's also worth. Maybe I can sort of mention. So we work with trade associations. We present our research to industry, but one of the barriers is that very often. So if you're operating in a provincial town, and actually economically, you're marginal at best. You're probably just keeping your head above water. It's not, you're not reading journals, at that time, and actually you will struggle to get to a national summit, trade association summit, where you can access these things. So I think one of the things that I've kind of assembled a tri-university alliance for music research in Lancashire, which incorporates the University of Lancashire, which I'm affiliated to, the University of Lancaster University, and Edge Hill University. And so I think academic, universities, institutions can pull together, because actually where I've been working on a bid. So basically we need to get money to be able to do the research. And in this particular case, it's an AHRC Curiosity bid, Arts and Humanities Research Council. So what that would do is enable us the resource to actually do some valuable research, which in essence will try and tackle some of the problems. And the one that I'm currently working on is about resilience and reinvention for grassroots music venues and nightclubs, but looking at a case study. So one of the things that has kind of been had less attention, the big cities tend to get more research focus because of their condensed infrastructure. But actually, we're looking at Lancashire as a county is more provincial. So the idea is basically that we take Preston as a case study, because it kind of sits in between. It is a city by name, but it's a large provincial town. We look for new ideas. We look at what's working. We look at what isn't working. We bring all of the stakeholders. So I suppose the point really I'm making now is that if the research can be organic in the sense that it incorporates the stakeholders and they're feeding into it, but also this research project would be 2 years long, and actually we need to with the sector in jeopardy, and actually no nightclubs by New Year's Eve 2030. If we're on this trajectory, we have to have intervention. We have to produce active, useful, real-time research. But actually, things like the fact that I know what you're doing provides opportunity and new ideas, things that we can try in these environments. So I think that again just illustrates how academic institutions can share this and actually disseminate through different mechanisms. But also what we might try in Preston, what we might discover in Preston, we can then apply to somewhere like Burnley, and then we can transmit. It's not going to. Places are a bit different, but I think we're kind of acknowledging that. The provincial towns are a bit different to the cities, So I don't know if I've answered the question, but in essence, trade associations are very useful. Key reports that actually, like yours, that do get a lot of industry attention. Working and embedding industry into the research mechanisms. In Preston, we're creating a task force that, so one of the things that may help is if local authorities better understand what it means to be an operator, and operators better understand how authorities or how bid might work, and sort of getting everyone working effectively together and trying to do some of making it easy for someone whose head's in a silo just trying to survive, and actually taking stuff out, kind of to the places.
I think that's great. I think there's a couple of really important points you've raised there. One of them, I think you said, embedding stakeholders into the research process, I think is really important and something I think we should see more of. I mean, the study I was doing is maybe a kind of example of that, working with a promoter to do research. I know there are other projects in the works where there is collaborations going on with big nightlife venues and researchers, which I think is really important. Also, I have to thank Tony. He has got academics involved in trade association conferences, the Nighttime Economy Summit, and we have presented our research there. And obviously the report you're referring to, Dance Music's Impact on Communities and Culture, which I will maybe speak a little bit about at the end, which you can go and view. It's from 2022. That was made publicly available, and I like to think that has got into the hands of venues and industry stakeholders that can use it in a way to help them and help support them. I don't know, it's always hard to measure exactly how much impact kind of reports are having, and I think that's why this question of how we make this research really actionable is so important. But I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts on this one.
I do as well. Go ahead, Alice. Sorry.
We'll start with.
Answer, go ahead.
We'll start with Rufi and then Kikiluma.
Okay, thank you. I think what I have seen over the past few years that I've done research, the packaging and how you deliver is key. Knowledge exists. It's just how you deliver it. The translation of it, it becomes very, very important. You have to be really strategic about it. So one of the reports that actually has been published today that I wrote is on whether royalties for club plays reach the producers or the right producers actually or not. It's published today, and that involves several stakeholders. So it's not just collection societies, but also venues are involved, DJs and producers themselves are involved, and the technology providers are involved. So the full report is actually 85 pages, but the translation, the delivery, how we've done is we've created 4 stakeholder versions 4 or 5 pages specific to the producer, specific to the technology provider. They don't have to, if they're not interested, maybe the academics, we will be more interested in reading the whole report. But if you are a producer, you're definitely not going to read the 80-page report. So if you've written a 4-pager report that's just for them, the recommendations and the key findings, that makes sense to them. So I think this way the delivery becomes very targeted, and hopefully it sits and lands in a way that probably a massive, lengthy 80-page report might not. So that this is one of the ways that we have sort of helped tackle that problem, whether it's landing properly or not. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that's really useful insights. Kikaloma, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, absolutely. I think just echoing what Rufi said about kind of dissemination, I think there's also the opportunity to get quite creative with it. I think, we can't ignore the fact that a lot of people get their information from social media. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't read either anymore. And so I think there's an opportunity to maybe work with, as we said, stakeholders. A lot of those people are DJs, to kind of disseminate a lot of their interests and research findings to their broader audiences. I think one of the biggest stakeholders is the general public. I think there's like a lot of sentiment that comes with people's perceptions of what nightlife and club culture is. It's also interesting seeing the cultural differences, for example, in places like Berlin, where there's trade bodies like the Club Commission, or, places in Amsterdam where they have Nighttime Foundation, where there's like a lot more work to really galvanize the public opinion around nightlife and also support clubs through the transitions, versus places like the UK that kind of don't offer as much support, although, London has, this new association to kind of support. But I think, getting creative with the dissemination. When I was at university, we would say there's lecturers and then there's teachers. And so being able to kind of deliver information, particularly academic information, in a way that can reach the general masses is a skill, and it's something that should kind of be lent more heavily into. Just kind of galvanizing people to get excited about club culture in a way again. People kind of connect with the videos and the clips of DJs doing their thing, which can have varying results as an artist. But I think there's other ways to kind of get people's interest going, and maybe to explore other platforms and other mediums, whether it's video, imagery, artistry, to kind of, convey that information.
Yeah, I think that's great. I really agree with this idea of using more creative and accessible ways to disseminate research, and something I try to think about a lot. And I think that's really interesting points. I don't know if anyone in our audience has anything. Don't be shy. You can pop up your hand. Yeah.
Hi there. I put something on the Padlet about scale, and I think what's interesting about a lot of the academic research, my own included, describes the positive effects that people get from going out dancing is focused around small-scale events rather than at scale. So there's a lot of research at scale. So DJ Monitor, for example, one of the, which is the recognition of what tracks were played in a DJ set. That one of the places that was piloted was Eden Nightclub in Ibiza, where they've got cameras everywhere, and they're watching everyone's movements. They're all linked to the bar sales, and so they're using Kuvo built into Alpha Theta's software to work out what drinks are being sold at what BPM, who's buying, how often people buying spirits, how often people buying beer. There's a huge amount of money involved at the top end. Boiler Room, Printworks, Warehouse Project, they're either unconscionable, depending on your politics, or they're fantastic capitalist ventures. So there's this kind of range, and I just wonder if we're talking about research, are we talking about, is everything the same everywhere, or is the nuance quite significant?
I think it's a really important point. I mean, it raises a whole other point of discussion there, the difference between kind of mainstream nightlife culture maybe, as opposed to grassroots, underground dance music culture perhaps. And I think there is a difference, and I think there's a lot of nuances to tease out. I think that's an interesting point. I'm going to, in the interest of time, jump forward a bit onto a question that I think is really interesting to discuss in relation to all of this. and I touched on it a bit earlier in my own work, but in terms of the kinds of collaborative projects and event opportunities that academics and industry professionals could be working on together, could be co-creating, this idea of embedding stakeholders in research to make the greatest impact. Could clubs become sites for scientific experimentation? Is this another use that venues could have, perhaps? Or even public health interventions with the link between dance music and well-being? So I think this is an interesting thing to discuss, and I know Kikalomo has written quite an influential article about this, so I will start with you.
Yeah, thank you. I think for context, I wrote an opinion piece for a resident advisor talking about the intersection of nightlife and science and how maybe there could be more kind of interconnectivity. And this was driven by one of the outcomes from the documentary is that one of the scientists we interviewed, Dr. Julia Basso, she is doing a lot of research around at the University of Virginia Tech, around movement and the impact that it's had. And after the documentary, she's now doing research together with the Hip Hop DJ Society at her university to look at the impact that DJing has on mothers with postnatal depression. She's also looked at it for a treatment for ADHD. And so that kind of sparked my interest in, we see that clubs have all this space and are struggling to get people through the doors. That there's an opportunity and interest in a lot of the things that clubs have, whether that's, big sound systems, lighting rigs and whatnot. And, most of the day they're not open and, midweek also they're not open. And so I think there could be opportunities to kind of have more intersection between clubs and scientific research and use the spaces as sites for kind of testing hypotheses and the like. I feel like even if there was some sort of government scheme or potentially, more initiatives that can more closely link science and the spaces together, there could be a lot of opportunities to also dive into a lot more detail as to the benefits that the club environment can bring. And I guess maybe be even more considered and be more detailed in how we approach kind of advocating for the importance of spaces that kind of build on our culture and our connectivity as a society as well. So that was my original idea. So build that connection. Maybe I'll leave it at that in case anyone has more comments.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think those ideas really resonated with me, and I thought it was an amazing article, opinion piece that you wrote. Does anyone else in the audience as well have any comments on this idea of collaborative projects, co-creating new kinds of events with research involved in science?
I've got a brief thing to say. So a lot of my research in other parts of my academic interest is to do with participation. So I work with, I'm an applied performance specialist, so I work with young adults that have been diagnosed with cancer. Creating dramas with them. And one of the things that we say in applied performance is nothing about us without us. That's the adage. So, to really kind of delve into young people's attitudes to club culture, we need to engage those young people. We need to work with them. So, I'm all for working with the industry and with club promoters and venue owners, and that's so important. I think we have to recognise that academia works at a glacial pace compared to industry, so there's a bit of a challenge there. But I think connecting with and working collaboratively with young people to find out what they want and to really engage them in the research as well, and absolutely take the point about mixed uses of those spaces, that those spaces are empty for long periods of time, and how they could be used in a broader sense, I think is really, really key. Collaborative work and partnership work has got to be at the core of this.
Definitely. Thank you for that. I will open it up to the audience in the room if anyone has any comments on any of the things we're talking about, or indeed the question we just raised there. Please don't be shy. Albini is over there. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I think you can hear me on the mic.
We'll bring you the mic quickly.
Yeah. Thank you, Alika. In connection to what Alice has just said, bringing an experience of schools having night dance, that would be the beginning, because if there are no night dance in schools, I remember of the secondary school where the schools were boarding, so there will be, every once in a while, there will be night dance, and we invite neighboring schools sometimes. That's one example. But also, it is not that the nightlife is ending in the modern clubs. It has ended elsewhere. We do remember when we were young, we go out for the moonlight dance. It's no longer existing. Why it ended, that's something else, but most of these traditions are going for several reasons. In our context, I remember where I grew, it's because of the religion. Traditional dance was associated to be something sinful, so it was no longer allowed, it was banned, because that was the time where young people mingle. And in relation to the question of age matters, does age matter? It actually matters, because when you're married, you're no longer allowed to go for dancing because that's not your space anymore. So it's just, I'm just bringing this experience from different perspective that indeed that these traditions die for several reasons, but I am happy, I'm glad that the idea of bringing back is coming, and it takes me back that in fact it's not the dance that has died. A lot of traditional things died with the dance, because during that time, moonlight, every time when the moon is back, we go out for dancing, and it's not only dancing. We learned lots of traditions, including how to relate with other colleagues and the like. And one of the most significant aspects is issues around sexual harassment were managed very well by young people. And nowadays, nothing like that exists. So yeah, I'm very much impressed with the research, and it's great. I think bring back the night dance in schools.
Yeah, that's a really interesting perspective. Thank you, Albini. I think there's lots of interesting points to raise there, that you raised there. But yeah, we'll move on, but I appreciate that, yeah. Has anyone else got any comments?
Okay. Hello, thank you for all the presentations. I'm a DJ as well and a researcher, and I wonder if there's more like is a shift between the clubbing scene from nightlife to day life. Like, I'm thinking back to conversations I have with some DJ colleagues, and apparently the Gen Z generation is not very into drinking or like drugs, so there's been this kind of like more like coffee shop kind of club parties going on in France. I think some in London as well. Also, colleagues who are DJs that maybe develop kind of like a drinking problem, and they're into like doing kind of sober parties. So yeah, I wonder if that is something to explore, you know, if, as you mentioned, you know, older generations kind of went back to the clubs after COVID. Youngers didn't, and these spaces are sometimes often like empty. If there could be sort of, a rethinking of what the club is and what the spaces can provide for people as well.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because this was going to be a question that I was going to put to the panel if I had time. This idea, Gen Z are more health conscious. Go out less and drink less, it seems. They also tend to be kind of inside on their phones more, maybe, I don't know. They're less, I mean, there's the stats to say, they do go out less. But they're potentially healthier in terms of the drinking less. So it's like, I feel like, personally, sober raving is becoming more popular, isn't it? Sober raving or conscious clubbing. And I think that's something to think about how we could... I know in Bristol, for example, there is a new venue called The Arc, I think. It's just opened. That is literally just a sober bar. My friend, who's the promoter that I worked with on the research, is putting on events there, actually. So I think there is a slight shift happening in the industry towards these kind of more sober clubbing, sober raving spaces, which I think is really good. I could probably talk about that for a while. I know we're running short on time. I'll open it up for one more quick insight.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, I think there's a couple things. I'll try and be quick. So one thing on like the accessibility of clubbing. Like I wrote the comment about chatting with like DJ Paulette and older DJs as well. And I saw somebody mention Jeff Mills as well, which is also like, yeah, he's dope as fuck. But like also like taking into account that there are some DJs that are DJs and audience members that are disabled, that are not as able-bodied but still make it to the club, and trying to make those spaces more accessible for them. So I did a performance, I think 2 weeks ago now, in a space in Manchester where they had a haptic dance floor. And so you could feel, I mean, that performance itself was more like ambient, but you could still feel the bass and everything like through your body, which not everybody is able to experience in like a big sound system, like say Subdub, which is like a big event that happens in Leeds. But things like that, or there was I think a hearing aid or something that's been developed for deaf people, for them to also hear. I'm paraphrasing, but there's more kind of technology around that. So being able to have that accessibility for venues to provide that would be interesting to see, and that could probably add to the shift of audience attendance. And then going on to like how do we kind of share and collaborate ideas with each other. So there's an organization called collective called Keep Hush. And I think a few years ago they did a survey with their community, which is like loads of people, post-COVID, about like their clubbing experiences and how they are finding it. And two things, many things came from that, but two of the things that really stuck with my head was that like a lot more people now are kind of having to weigh up between going to a night where one or two people that they know are playing versus a festival where loads of their favorite artists are playing. And so they're weighing up the possibilities of what should I put my money towards a ticket, as well as like travel, accommodation and all of that as well. And I think that's more of a universal thing across age groups that a lot of people are figuring out. And there was another thing, but I'm forgetting. But then there's also like the Leeds nighttime economy. We've seen a few places shut down here, unfortunately. And then venues having to kind of take on more of a like open, like you can hire us for anything kind of approach, which has been helpful, but there's still the threat of closure. And then that then has an impact on people that need safer spaces to experience that euphoria and that utopian kind of feeling as well. So there's loads of things.
No, amazing, thank you. There's so much I want to say to like all of those points, and I really appreciate you bringing up the accessibility thing and hearing aids for people on the dance floor. I think that is really important, and yes, you're right, people are being more selective about the events they tend to based on whether they're buying into the lineup or buying into the experience. I think these are really great points. Amazing. I think we do have to wrap up now. I think there's a slide I want to just share at the end that will hopefully kind of wrap things up. So we can continue this amazing discussion that we're all having, because I feel like there's just not enough time to get into everything. I've set up a kind of group and a network called Electronic Impact. This kind of comes off the back of the report I mentioned, Dance Music's Impact on Communities of Culture, which was the report Tony referred to that myself, Tony, Alice and Alinka worked on, and we kind of called ourselves the Electronic Impact Group, and it's very informal, but I thought I'd kind of formalise a little group and a network here so we can continue these discussions afterwards and also hopefully connect with each other, and maybe we can collaborate. If there are people within the industry here that want to collaborate, if there are other researchers, and we can kind of, we can see what comes of that. It will be like a mailing list Google group. And there's also that QR code takes you to a kind of website as well, which showcases some of the projects that I'm talking about here, like that report, as well as I'm going to put some nice examples of research on there that's open access for everyone to see. Okay, I'll stop rambling on, because I think we're very much out of time. So thank you all. Thank you to all of our panelists and everyone who joined us in person and online. Big thank you to Dan, Alinka, Scott McLaughlin, Leo Singer as well for helping kind of organise the whole TMX series. and Colin and the technical team for their help organising this event. The bar is going to be open for a little bit now, I think, till about 7:30. So do feel free to catch me and maybe some of our other panellists over a drink if you want to have a chat. But I'll just wrap up there and I'll just hand it over to Alinka, who will tell us about the next TMX event.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, and thanks. It's been really great to have you all here. So you'll know that what we're trying to achieve here is conversations between researchers and between industry practitioners to discuss and share ideas and share findings and to have an impact and to develop collaborations. The next project is actually going to be on the Eurovision Song Contest. So that is going to be in its 70th year in 2026, and we have a colleague in the school who's doing some research on the working practices of the songwriters. He's been engaging them with some sort of surveys and interviews, and it's going to be an opportunity for the presentation, much like we've seen today, the presentation of some research evidence and a conversation and a panel discussion with those who are working in the industry. So that's going to be in March, and hopefully see some of you at that event. But thank you very much to the audience. Thanks to everybody online as well who has tuned in and given thoughts. And I know that James will be looking at those carefully and closely to think about the insights and the really good points that have been raised today. So thanks, everybody. Bye.